Thanks, Anthony, and welcome everyone. Welcome to the webinar again, how to move Tabs 3 to the cloud. My name is Aaron Ettram. Just a little background on me. I have a very strong background in technology. I've been in the technology industry for over 20 years now. I've served as a network administrator for Fortune 500 companies. I was an IT consultant for 7 years, and now I work more on the business side with a focus on business development. It's a pleasure for me to serve as your speaker today. I've worked with hundreds of law firms all over the world, but for the most part in North America here. For an agenda deck, we're going to go over just a kind of a brief introduction to Tabs 3 and Practice Master. We're going to cover what is the cloud and why has the term misled so many. How does Tabs 3 work in the cloud? Does it matter who I host with? We're going to do a full overview of the financial case, and then we're going to answer some questions at the end. So just to kick it off, just to get a sense of our audience, we're going to run a poll. Are you in the cloud with Tabs 3 now? And it's yes, no. I would like to be, but I'm not quite sure how it works. I'm using a different case management software, or I don't have case management software, but I'm considering using Tabs 3. Go ahead, Anthony, and run.
All right, we're getting some votes in. We're going to give it just about another 10 seconds to let everybody give us their response here. All right, I'm going to close the poll. So it looks like the majority of our attendees this afternoon are not currently in the cloud with Tabs 3. We do have a few people who are. A few people who would like to be but not sure how that works, and a few people who are using a different case management system.
All right. Well, thank you. So we're going to run just a quick overview of Tabs 3. I know that this is a lot of people here probably already own Tabs 3 today, so we're going to just make this quick. So just a couple of high-level things. Tabs 3 is fundamentally a very robust billing and accounting system that's designed for law firms between about the 3 to maybe 60-ish user market. That small to medium-sized law firm market is where they really shine, and we'll kind of dig into a few reasons why. Now, what's important is that Tabs 3 is integrated billing and accounting all in one system. And a lot of law firms will have different billing and accounting systems, which can be cumbersome from an integration standpoint. Even if you get the integration working, one product updates, it kind of breaks everything, and it could take sometimes days or weeks just to get it working smoothly again. Now, coming back to the fundamentals, you'll see a lot of firms using generic programs like QuickBooks. Now, law firms' accounting needs do tend to be unique, and the vanilla accounting systems oftentimes don't meet those needs. Now, Tabs 3 financial management tools, they fully meet the needs of a law firm. I won't jump too far into the weeds because I know, again, that we're here to learn about cloud options. But again, at a high level, billing is a very critical part of any law firm. And having flexibilities for the complexities that may surround the timekeepers is really a must. Also being able to bill in different manners, from flat fee, split fee, contingency, progress, or electronic task-based is very important as well. And sometimes these are things that people who have tabs take for granted, and they learn that this is not a standard across other applications. Now, also being able to get those bills out and get paid quickly is very important. And I think reporting is one of the most important features. Having robust reporting does not exist in a lot of applications. And this is where a lot of web applications fall short. So when you're working with Tabs 3, it takes the guesswork out of the equation. And from what I've learned dealing with lawyers, sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes, the mathematics and those gut feelings do not always align. So reporting is crucial to obtaining the facts and understanding the productivity level of your staff and the profitability level of your clients. And then long and short, being able to apply advanced filters and sort key data and run these robust reports, it makes all the difference in the world between good or bad decision making within the law firm. The last aspect of billing that I'll touch on is compensation. This is another area where law firms tend to be very unique. You might have an attorney who brings in a case, you might have the attorneys who work the case, you have paralegals, people are billing at different levels with their associate, partner, so on and so forth. And you need to have a system that really accounts for all this sophistication. Moving over to the accounting side, outside of general ledger, accounts payable, accepting credit cards, I find that a lot of law firms, they deal with trust accounts. And what's surprising is many law firms that deal with trust accounts don't have trust accounting specific software. In these cases, law firms will tend to lean on people to enforce these rules. And when you are leaning on a human and you don't have software like Tabs3 helping to prevent making accounting errors, it's only a matter of time before a mistake is made. And when it's made, you just have to cross your fingers and hope that you don't get called out on the carpet for it, because oftentimes bar associations get involved at that point. So don't play with fire. You need robust trust accounting features and reporting to ensure that these books are managed with the highest standards in mind. Now, billing and accounting is certainly a foundational must for almost any law firm, and that's the heart and soul of Tabs3. What I think STI did really well is that they made an optional add-on called Practice Master for what they refer to as, or as what the industry refers to as, the front office piece of managing a law firm. And the front office piece could include things like conflict checks, calendar management, document assembly, management of clients by matter type, general matter management workflow tools that'll also help you to really centralize those matter specific details all into one spot. This could include documents, notes, appointments, costs, bills, balances, and more. Now, we could spend hours talking about this. And if you want to learn more about Practice Master or Tabs3, feel free to contact us later. We have a very large partner network, many of which are certified in Tabs3, and they do great work, and we'd be happy to make an introduction for you. Again, we're here to ultimately learn about putting Tabs3 in the cloud. So why am I even talking about the application features? So I'm going to get to that in one moment, but we're going to run a quick poll again. In the poll, this is just a yes or no. Has the cloud conversation encouraged you to either look at new case management software or impacted which case management software you are willing to even consider? Anthony?
All right, we'll wait just about another 15 seconds while some answers trickle in. All right, going to close it in just 1 second. And it looks like the majority, about 2/3 of the attendees today in today's webinar, has said yes, that the cloud conversation has encouraged you to look at new management software or impacted the software that you're even willing to consider. So we got about 2/3.
It's about normal. Thank you for running that poll for us, Anthony. So let's run over why. So let's look at the cloud appeal here. Now the picture on the right pretty much sums it up, the general mindset of most businesses today. And many law firms have mistakenly associated owning Tabs3 as going hand in hand with server ownership. So people want to avoid the cons. They don't want to buy expensive servers and licensing and backup systems. They don't want to deal with maintenance and repair, and they don't want all the liabilities that come with owning a server. And law firms will do almost anything to avoid all of these cons that come with it. Now, unfortunately, many have been misled and feel the need to change applications in order to achieve this. And we'll talk about this more shortly. Now, as far as the cloud goes, everything looks very appealing. It's generally very low upfront investments. You have a lot better mobility and, of course, less liability, right? They feel that that's where the salvation is. So it's a little wonder that at a bare minimum, law firms will at least consider what are the cloud options before pursuing the same old cycle of server ownership. So that leads us to our next poll question, which is, what is, quote unquote, the cloud? This is a tricky one. So we have a handful of options here. A black box of confusion, perfectly acceptable answer. B, applications built on web technology. C, an over-brutalized marketing buzzword. That's a metaphor for the internet. D, storage of data and or applications that is provided by a third-party service. So we'll let Anthony run the poll here for 15 seconds and we'll get back to it.
All right, the poll is open and answers are coming in. Okay, I'm going to close the poll. It looks like the majority had voted storage of data and applications provided by a third-party service. And we did get some answers for applications built on web technology, but the majority of people, storage of data.
All right, thanks, Anthony. So that is a good classification. That's probably the most accurate. That and C is a good answer as well. That would be my definition of it. It is a bit of an over-brutalized buzzword. Now, for those who are confused or those who answered B, I'm glad you're here. If you answered B, applications built on web technology, it's sort of the equivalent of someone asking, what is transportation? And if their answer was, well, a car. And that's not the wrong answer per se. It's certainly a form of transportation, but it's not the definition, nor is it the end all be all to all transportation options. So a lot of times this thinking comes about because, and it's very popular, because that's what people were led to believe. And even there's consultants out there leading their clients down this path as well. Which brings us back to that original poll question, which was, has the cloud conversation encouraged you to either look at new case management software or impacted which case management software you're even willing to consider? So now coming back to what is the cloud? Now, understanding what the cloud is can really be answered by evaluating its purpose or your goals. So what is it that law firms are really looking to accomplish? And we can give it a number of answers, but it comes down to two core things. And one is better mobility. So this isn't really a luxury item anymore. People expect this. They want to be able to look up important case information on the go. They want to be able to bill hours on the spot without allowing items to fall between the cracks. Also, they want to centralize data and information. They might have several law offices. They might have people that work from home, and this gives them the ability to seek out or retain talent without geographic limitations. Next is you want to eliminate liability, and that means the liabilities of buying servers and maintaining them, and then it's a never-ending money pit where you have to make sure that they're updated and that they're safe from a cybersecurity standpoint, and that they're backed up on-site, off-site. You need to make sure they're in good health and that they're not on the verge of a crash. You need to make sure you're not about to get malware, that you're infected. And then you need to worry about all the little things like theft, water damage, fires, natural disasters, all these headaches and liability anchors that come with owning servers is a burden. So what is the cloud? And really, it is any service that ultimately helps you to achieve these goals. You have to ignore the word cloud and really focus on what you're trying to accomplish. So looking at kind of the dark side of the cloud, many have felt pigeonholed into kind of seeking out a web application, feeling that this is the only way to be in the cloud, or someone led them to believe so. So they start evaluating new options. Now, this could be the first mistake. Now, I've seen law firms turn their back on Tabs3 or other robust applications for watered down web applications and regret it almost instantly. Oftentimes, you'll see these firms transition back within a matter of months. Now, when you look at products like Tabs3 and other products like it that have been around for 2-3 decades, these are features that they've been incorporating into their software for years, and it can't be so easily emulated. So a lot of case management companies will use words like case management, document management, billing, reporting, calendaring, maybe even accounting, and it all looks super good on the banner, right? So people think in their minds, hey, well, this should be able to replace Tabs3 or Practice Master, no problem. Well, what they realize pretty quickly is that these terms are thrown around with quite a bit of liberty, sometimes borderlining on outright deception. So these firms might have gained a little mobility, but the lack of robust features ends up costing them dearly in the end. Billable hours get missed. They miss appointments. Data that they used to be able to get with a touch of a button now takes hours to gather and compile. Maybe if you leaned on things like split billing, that doesn't exist anymore. When it's all said and done, they thought they were going to save all this money, but those savings have evaporated and now they're losing money. So when it comes to putting Tabs3 in the cloud specifically, what we're going to look at is what is the differences? And it's a very popular question is, when I put Tabs3 in the cloud versus on-premise, is it a different product? Now, looking at the example of QuickBooks, QuickBooks has a lot of brand name recognition. And for this reason, when they made the web version of the product, what did they do? They called it QuickBooks Online. Sounds great, right? Same good old QuickBooks, just online now. Well, as people found out, this was not the same product, just in a web browser format. It was a complete remake and lacked a lot of robust features that were previously available within their desktop and installable versions. Now, while this may have worked for very basic businesses without robust needs, for many, this online version of QuickBooks was just not a viable option. Now, also note, this was made by the same company, Intuit. And QuickBooks Online has been out for several years now, and they're still not caught up to the traditional version. So is it little wonder that applications such as Tabs3 cannot be so easily duplicated? And mind you, by completely different companies apart from the owners of the original brand name. That said, instead of slapping together some watered down web app and calling it Tabs3 Online, STI preserved the brand name along with all of its advanced features and functions. And when you go to put Tabs3 or Practice Master on the cloud per se, it's the exact same product. The only difference is instead of you installing it on your server in your computers, you're installing it on a virtual platform or virtual servers and virtual computers that are outside of your office. Other benefits to this approach, there's a lot of them. First, we'll talk about just database conversions. When you switch applications, you're dealing with a different database format, you're dealing with different logic, you're dealing with just a different structure. So when you go to transition something over, your custom reports, you can pretty much kiss all of those goodbye. They have to be redone from scratch if you're even able to recreate them. So consultants who do this kind of work, they often will end up spending hours to move everything over. And this bill can jump into the thousands, if not sometimes tens of thousands. And even after it's all said and done, it's not going to be perfect. You're still going to spend weeks on end trying to figure out where's our data, where should new data go. See, when you move Tabs3 to the cloud, it's a simple matter of taking your existing Tabs3 database in its exact format and plugging it into a new database server. You don't have these expensive conversion costs. It's the equivalent of buying a new server, taking tabs from server A, putting it on server B. The next issue is probably the biggest, and that's adoption of new software. Now, many law firms struggle with new software and learning new systems from scratch. And it's easy to become overwhelmed with practicing law, and it's a burden for them to handle this. It also can be a bit of a black box. So the features and claims, as we touched on before, that seem so appealing on the banner, once you start using it in a production environment, they quickly realize there's some serious shortcomings. And lastly, depending on how long you use the product, you may have been fine-tuning it for years and getting it just right. Make no mistake, that perfect cocktail that you've formulated over the years, it's going to take a lot of time to reproduce. Now, is this all fear tactics to get you to never switch software until your firm dissolves? No. But you do need to make these decisions with open eyes and understand what you're doing. And as I mentioned earlier, I've seen firsthand law firms try to move away from products like Tabs3, and they end up doing a complete 360 when it's all said and done. And this can end up costing the firm by adding months of frustration. Thousands of dollars are lost in terms of buying new software, converting it, then paying to convert it back. And that cost often pales in comparison to the loss of productivity and things slipping between the cracks during that time frame. So for these reasons, I've heard a lot of experienced legal software consultants say that switching legal software programs should always be plan Z. More often than not, they find that either the software was not being utilized correctly, or as we described earlier, a law firm feels that they have to switch applications in order to be in the cloud. So it comes down to having an accurate grip on the pros versus the cons. So going to the cloud is always a good thing, not at the expense of adequate features. Whatever benefits you think you're going to gain can quickly disappear. Fortunately, you can have your cake and eat it too. Obtaining your cloud goals with Tabs3 is 100% possible, which makes this virtually a no contest. And why I say virtually, what's the last leg that web application companies try to stand on? The illusion of cost savings. And we're going to break this down later in the presentation. All right, Tabs3 in the cloud. Where do I start? We're going to run another poll here, and there's no right or wrong answer here. This is just a preference. Would you rather have a solution that just hosts Tabs 3, or would you rather have a more all-encompassing solution that hosts Tabs 3, maybe your documents, email, third-party applications, Office, and maybe includes IT support, not just for the cloud, but also some local needs? So we'll let Anthony take the poll away.
Okay, we're going to have the poll open for just a little bit, maybe 10 more seconds, as the answers are trickling in. All right, I'm going to close the poll. It looks like most people had responded. We are a split 50-50, right down the middle of today's attendees on this webinar that want a solution that just hosts Tab 3, and the other half wanting a solution all-encompassing that hosts Tabs 3 and much more.
All right, yep, that's pretty normal. The last application webinar we did, it was 60-40, so it's very close. It's almost, we've been seeing that in the market lately. A lot of people have different goals, and there's no right or wrong answer. So let's talk about that real quick here. So what hosting option you need entirely depends on your situation. Now, some people are looking to host just Tabs 3, and that's covered really by the foundational needs here on the left. So ignore the orange if you can put the virtual blinders on for a moment. We're just looking at the foundational needs. Now, some things that you want to make sure of when you're looking at cloud is you want to make sure that you're on a what's called private cloud. So a lot of cloud companies are doing shared server methodology to provide a cheaper cost point. So they'll have several databases sitting in one big database server. They might have shared file servers. They might have shared Active Directory for ease of management for their staff, and so on and so forth. And what that does is that creates a security risk to you, because if one of those accounts gets breached or someone puts the wrong user in the wrong group, all of a sudden company A can see company B's data and vice versa, or even worse, somebody gets a SQL injection or somebody gets hit with a crypto locker. Well, guess what? Everyone's going down together. Private cloud is a must. There are shortcut ways of doing this, and there's a big difference in price, and there's a reason for it. So you want to make sure that you have private stuff. You want to make sure that support and updates, if you want to update Tabs 3, if you want to update Office, is that going to be covered? Am I going to have to pay for that? Bank grade security standards, we won't jump down this rabbit hole too far because that could be a whole webinar on its own, but you want to make sure that you have some enterprise grade security standards, not just in the firewalls and in the antivirus and in the spam filtering, but also in the level of backups that you have. And then, of course, this is going to be delivered through some sort of either virtual desktop, maybe a Citrix instance, for example, and it should come with unlimited support as well, so that you're not paying a nickel and dime effect. We'll talk about that a little bit more as well. Now, this is a great fit, for example, legal departments, government agencies, maybe larger firms with an IT director. For smaller to mid-sized firms, maybe you have an IT consultant. And many times what I find is that people have already started their journey to the cloud. So maybe it started with Office 365, and it's like, hey, this email up here is great. Let's get our documents up there. So what do they do next? Well, let's get a SharePoint or a OneDrive. And then what's left when it's all said and done? Well, we still got tabs here. If we could just get rid of tabs, we would be 100% in the cloud, and we can get rid of this server. So now they're looking to put tabs in the cloud. And this is where the law firm could either work with the IT consultant directly, or a lot of IT consultants work with Legalcentric cloud hosting specialists to kind of help fill that last remaining void. Now, by adding the options on the right here, this is going to give you a little bit more of an all-inclusive one-stop shop type of service. And that's a great fit for your small to mid-sized firms who are not exactly thrilled with the IT care they have today, or they want to avoid too much fragmentation. So for example, you can get things like Microsoft Office, you can get your file server up there, you can get hosted Exchange, you can get antivirus that extends beyond the cloud down to your local computers and devices, and have the SLA or the service level agreement for support extend to local area network items as well, including computers, tablets, wireless, network equipment, so on and so forth. And this can really help you to avoid a little something that I like to call cloud hell. And we'll describe that here on the next slide. Now, cloud hell looks a little something like this. Now, this is a byproduct of law firms moving into the cloud in a very incremental manner that wasn't very well thought out or planned in the first place. Now, like we said, this can start with Office 365. Then people move on to like a Dropbox or a OneDrive or maybe like a LegalWorks or a NetDocs type solution. And then after all this is accomplished and all the applications are kind of in the cloud, they have Tabs3 left. Maybe they go move that with a vendor to host. And so now they got rid of their server. But they still have needs from an IT standpoint because you still have computers, you still have network equipment, you still have printers, you still have scanners, you still have mobile devices, and you still need help. So you're not going to get rid of that IT angle, right? So when you take a big step back and you look at this, the law firm now has multiple services, they have multiple bills, and adding or removing users is very time consuming, and they have some liability anchors there. I've seen on more than one occasion law firms remove a user and they thought they removed them from all the little portals and they forgot one. And it happens more often than you would think. And now that could be considered a breach because that person no longer works at the firm, but they had access to the data for X period of time. A more common example, and I can tell you from experience, we have a lot of clients that host just Tabs3 with us, and there can be some confusion. So we'll get a lot of false positive help desk calls where people are calling in like, yeah, I got a new phone, my email's not working, can you help me get this set up? And we're like, no, we just host your Tabs3. And you can hear the users getting agitated. You're like, what do you mean? Well, who am I supposed to call? And they're fumbling through numbers and they're trying to figure out what's going on because they have 3, sometimes 4 different points of support. And it can add to a lot of frustration on the side of your users, whereas before when they had one phone number to call when they needed help. So I'm not saying that this is unworkable, you just need to be aware of the frustration that this can cause and some of the merits that come with the all-inclusive route. So how do we avoid all this? This can be avoided with proper planning. Take the time to understand all of your options, measure twice, cut once, right? Roadmap the destination before starting the journey. Incremental decision making can lead your firm to the land of the 3 F's, and that's fragmentation, frustration, and financial loss. Try to avoid that. All right, moving on to who. Does it matter who I host with? All clouds are not created equal. So we're going to be looking at kind of the players, and there's really 3 categories, right? So you have your local IT consultants, that's kind of the devil you know. You have your cloud generalists. These people are kind of focused on hosting for everyone and anyone. And then you have your cloud specialists. These are people who are more focused on a specific industry or a handful of specific applications. So let's start with the IT consultants. Now, IT consultants these days are pretty cloud aware. To preserve business, most of them have labeled some sort of solution as an option. And to this day, many of them will still try to get you to stay on premise and maybe create some fear and uncertainty around cloud solutions. Now, in the event that their client is demanding a cloud option, you might hear them use the word hybrid cloud. So for example, if you have Tabs, Office, Adobe, email, and a file server, it might go something like this. Maybe they'll start you on Office 365, getting your email up, and they'll move you to OneDrive or Dropbox, and then where does that leave Tabs? They'll either try to maybe host that on their own, or they'll try to convince you to keep just one server on site for that. Now, some IT firms have evolved into offering a little bit more of a complete solution, and typically this is delivered through a third-party hosting service such as AWS or Microsoft Azure, for example. And this just means they're going to rent infrastructure in your behalf, and then they're going to charge you a monthly fee to kind of manage this rented environment. And typically this ends up being a little more expensive than just owning servers when it's all said and done. But a bigger issue can be legal-centric application expertise. Most IT firms are focused on what I like to call the vanilla aspects of IT, meaning the core aspects of the infrastructure. And then when you start getting down the rabbit hole of legal applications like Tabs3, you will probably encounter some shoulder shrugging. Almost every law firm that I've talked to has experienced the finger pointing game between the IT consultants and their software vendor. The next thing to consider is most IT firms are fairly small organizations. This is one thing to kind of have them come in and manage your servers and equipment. Worst case scenario, they go belly up And you have to do what? Search for a new provider to come in there and help you out. Now imagine handing them everything and then their doors close. Where does that leave you? Now, I'm not saying that you have to host with a massive multi-billion-dollar organization, but you do want to be in a boat with many of your peers. You want clear signs of business stability and growth. Don't be afraid to ask them how long they've been doing this. How many other law firms do they have as clients? You know, what is their year-over-year growth patterns? And look for validation. Look for things like the Inc. 5000 award, or look for references and obtain proof that they have other happy clients. Don't take their word for it. That said, all of that said, it can still be difficult to move away from a relationship-oriented setup with an IT consultant, and that's understandable. As they've maybe been your consultant for years, then they have your trust and you count on them. Also, having a local resource and that can add kind of that face-to-face touch does have an appeal. As a good solution to this dilemma, a lot of IT firms have partnered with national legal software hosting specialists to provide a better solution to their clients. And this really allows their clients to go 100% to the cloud without on-premise servers and still get the facets of what they want. Next, we're going to talk about kind of the large-scale cloud service provider. Now, these are companies that are geared towards cloud hosting. That's their business model. It's not an aspect of their portfolio. Now, the pros of this is these players typically own their own cloud infrastructure. They're not renting from AWS or Microsoft Azure or some other massive infrastructure service company. And why is that a good thing? Well, first, it shows their level of commitment and investment into being a serious player in the cloud space. Very few companies are willing to spend 7 figures or more on infrastructure. This also gives you a clue as to how many potential clients they have. Anyone can rent a cloud from AWS, slap on a management fee, and come at it from that route. Next, it also dictates their level of control and their ability to directly impact their end client's experience. So for example, when we started in 2007, we had to rent a cloud. We didn't have that kind of money. We rented from Rackspace, and at the time we couldn't afford to build our own platform. So we were a glorified middleman, and it came with a lot of challenges. And some of those issues were completely out of our control. So our clients would call and bark at us, and then we in turn would pick up the phone and bark at someone else. So you want your vendor to be 100% invested in the cloud. You want them to be in control, and ultimately you want them to be accountable. And here's the key. If they're not willing to invest in themselves, then you don't want to be the one to invest your business in them. Cloud companies that own infrastructure can also provide better rates or more of a complete offering without cutting corners. Being a middleman and being competitive is very difficult. So oftentimes they'll take shortcuts or cut out things they should be offering, whether that be in the SLA or they're selling underpowered environments and so on. Another downside is they lack that industry expertise again. So typically when you're going to quote something out, you always want to be careful that when you type in cloud hosting for law firms in Google, a lot of companies are smart enough to make a landing page. So you click on it, it's like, oh, look at this. These guys do law. Well, they also do accounting, and they also do healthcare, and they also do this, and they got a banner for everyone. Go to their homepage, try to get a sense. If you can't get a sense from their homepage that legal is their core expertise, then it's probably not. And it will impact your support experience, make no mistake about it. Next, prepare for inaccurate quotes. Because of their lack of expertise, they may not know exactly how to build the environment. So when you're dealing with the sales rep, do you think the sales rep's going to err on the side of caution and build in the right amount of resources on the front end? Or do you think they're going to err on the side of making the sale, cutting some things out, making the price seem appealing, and then getting you to sign, and after the fact, you're either going to have to deal with the poor performance or you can pay the surprise upcharges. So don't be fooled. You know, if price is lower than another vendor, trust me, there's a good reason for it. They're not providing the same service with lower profit margins out of the kindness of their hearts. Lastly, because of the lack of expertise, your odds of problems are greatly going to increase, and accountability for problems will again be a finger pointing war between the cloud provider and the software company, leaving you trapped in the middle, angry and confused. So in short, the point, your legal software matters. Make sure that you're not an irrelevant cog in a wheel of a generalist cloud provider. The last method is the Legalcentric Cloud Hosting Specialist. Now, this is also a cloud-driven company, but they have a very exclusive focus either on the legal community as a whole, or they're focused on a handful of legal applications within the realm. Now, these type of companies are far more rare and they're hard to find. Most cloud providers don't want to limit their market or potential client pool by focusing too much. See, to be a legal-centric cloud provider, it requires a lot of discipline. And yes, you're going to lose a lot of third-party business that you otherwise could have obtained. But your experience from your standpoint is going to be vastly different with these type of providers than with anyone else. So think of it this way. If it's your anniversary and you want to take your spouse out for a nice steak dinner, where do you go? Applebee's? Well, if you want to sleep on the couch, sure. No, you pick out a nice upper echelon steak restaurant that specializes in steaks, right? So don't bring your law firm to the Applebee's of cloud vendors. Now, specific benefits, a legal-driven cloud provider should be able to quote you accurately and quickly. So if you say, hey, we have 15 users, we have Tabs3, we have Office, we have Adobe DC, and we have World Docs, you should have a quote that's accurate in your hands within the hour. I've seen firms take weeks or days to quote. That is a horrible sign. Next, this is not their first rodeo. Their ability to properly prepare, build, and then migrate you is going to be a lot smoother. If they understand the application, then they're going to understand its nuances and how to install it, how to configure it, how to establish its links and plugins with other applications, and how to test or patch known issues before going live. They're also going to have a lot of experience with the support vendor, and in this case, STI. Problems are going to be far more rare, but when they occur, they work with the vendor to attack the problem, working together, not pointing the finger at each other. If there are application bugs or problems in a new version of the software, odds are they've probably dealt with it several times. You're not going to be in some uncharted adventure every time you go to upgrade your software with your fingers crossed. Also, their support staff is very acclimated to your industry. So everything's an emergency mentality that you'll find in a law firm. They're used to this. And I can promise you that they're going to be able to solve your problems much faster than your generalist IT and cloud provider. And lastly, you're in a boat with several of your peers. Law firms especially have kind of a strong tendency to want to flock together and implement a solution that has worked for hundreds of other law firms that came before them. So don't be the lab rat. Nothing beats tried and true. All right, a couple of red flags. First thing you want to understand is what's called the SLA, or the service level agreement. And a lot of vendors love to use the term unlimited support. The question is, unlimited support of what? If you read terms carefully, you typically can find some serious gotchas, and I'll give you some examples. Now, make sure the scope is not limited within what they'll do for you. And if you're on an all-inclusive plan, if they say they'll help you locally, watch out for that too. So I'll give you some examples. So a lot of vendors will either charge fees or rates by the hour for things that they consider not supported, which could be as simple as adding and removing users. What if you get a new computer? What if you get a new iPad or a new phone or a new printer? What if you want to upgrade tabs? What if you want to upgrade Microsoft Office, Adobe? Is there more fees? What if you want to get new virtual servers to accommodate a new version of tabs? Is that going to be a big fee? All these things are gotchas where a lot of cloud vendors price their product to sell. Then when you get behind the curtain, that's where you get beat up. Now, the next factor is one that gets ignored quite often, and it's who picks up the phone absolutely matters. A lot of cloud companies are cutting some serious corners here by overseas help desk, or oftentimes they'll hire some very low-level people at the help desk level to pick up the phone, bring you through some very basic troubleshooting. If that doesn't work, what happens? You get escalated. Now you're waiting for an engineer to call you back. And sometimes that could take a day or two. So who picks up the phone matters. Your goal should be to have as few problems as possible, and when those problems occur, you want rapid resolution. If you go with a cut rate vendor, then plan on paying for it by means of downtime, problems, and frustrations. Lastly, salespeople are always going to tell you that they're great. You need validation and proof. So look for a couple of key things. First, try to get a general sense of their reputation within the legal community by way of partnerships, awards, and so on. Next, look them up online and read reviews. We live in a society where people love to share their opinion, so take advantage of that. And lastly, whose opinion is more valuable than that of another law firm? So ask for references. And if they give you some lame excuse that they can't give them to you, then that's a red flag. Anyone that has happy law firms, they have law firms that are happy and willing to share that information with others. All right, the next topic needs no introduction. It's the financial case. So this is a big one for many people. They're like, that all sounds well and great, but what does it cost? And I'm sure a lot of heads just came off of their desk right now where they're going to pay attention for this segment. All right, so here's where we're going to get into the numbers. Now, we're going to get into the numbers, and we're not going to use the application versus application features. We're going to pretend all things are created equal. And the features and functions of a web app are the same as you're going to get with Tabs 3. So let's pretend here. All right, so the average cost to host tabs. Now, we talked before about the foundational needs, so let's cut it right here. If you're just looking to host tabs, right, just get the core things, you're looking at about $75 to $125 per user per month. And that does not include the annual maintenance agreement, which you should absolutely pay. If you're looking at an all-inclusive route over here, you're looking at about $135 to $200 a user. Again, does not include annual software maintenance. Now, at a glance, this may seem expensive, right? And you may look at it and be like, whoa, that's a lot of money. That's more than what we pay now. So what do a lot of law firms do? I broke the code. I'm just going to get a web-based case management. Look at that, $59 to $79 a user a month. We hit the jackpot. We figured out how to save all this money. It's so glorious. Look at those prices, $125, $135, $150 a user. Forget that. This is how we're going to save money, right? To an extent. Now, there is merit to web apps as far as saving physical money at a certain size. So on our next poll, at what point does web-based case management stop being cost effective? The options are A, 3 users, B, 6 or more users, C, 10 or more users, D, 25 or more users, or E, 50 or more users. We'll let you guess this one. Go ahead, Anthony.
All right, the poll is live. This is a really good question. I'm looking forward to seeing the answer to it. We're collecting polls right now, but it looks like the answers are scattered. I'm going to close it in about 6 seconds here. All right, it looks like the majority of the attendees today had said about 10 plus users. Every other answer was just about even.
All right, thanks, Anthony. So it's close. So in the handout section, you're going to have a cost calculator and a cost calculator chart. Now this chart is an average cost breakdown over a 36-month cycle. Here's our user count here, and then here's the on-premise, the private cloud, and the web app cost. Whoever's in green is winning, whoever's in yellow is second place, and whoever's in red is in last place. As you can see here at 1 user, web apps are really stomping it out. You save a lot of money if you're a solo. If you're 2 users, you still save a lot of money. At 3 users, you're still saving some money, just not as much. It actually starts to flip at 6 users. You start to see the private cloud start winning out. At 15 users, you actually see on-premise even starting to beat web apps. So we're going to break down why this is. Now, you also have a handout for a cost calc, and we started it with the 10 user foundation, so you'll have to modify those numbers based on the size of your firm. But I'm going to walk you through an example, and we're going to do a 15 user cost calculation. So we're going to figure out how did he come up with those numbers. So let's run through it real quick. Section by section, upfront cost. So here we have on-premise, here we have private cloud, here we have web applications. All right, so looking at everything from buying a server, backup solutions, battery backup, server licensing, CALs, consulting fees to set it all up. If you're a 15 user firm, you're gonna easily pay about $15,000, and that is not overpriced. That is very conservative, so we're not trying to bloat this at all. On a private cloud, you'll typically pay some kind of migration fee that might be around the realm of $4,500. And if you're deciding to move from Tabs to a web application, you're going to still pay some consulting fees to get that data out of there and get some training. That'll be about $5,000 up front just to make that transition. So here's your upfront cost case. Now we're going to move on to the monthly cost case. So here we go. If you own a server, on average, if it's being maintained properly, you're going to pay about $200 to $350 per server per month. And so if you have 2 to 3 servers, that could be right around $575. Of course, with private cloud, that's included. And of course, if you're in all web apps, that's not even applicable. You don't have a server. Well, here's what is applicable. We talked before about you still have computers, you still have printers, you still have scanners, you still have mobile devices, you have wireless access points, you have firewalls, and yada, yada, yada. You need help with all of that. The average IT firm is charging about $49 a user for this unlimited support scope with no server in the mix at all. So whether you're on premise or whether you're with a web app, you're still going to have this fee here. So that's 49 times 15. Okay, private cloud will typically include that. And this is, of course, if you're going with the all-inclusive. Offsite backups average around 25 to 75 cents a gig. That's a $90 factor about on-premise, included with private cloud, not applicable to web apps. All told, if you're a 15-user firm, my guess, your IT firm might articulate this differently, but you're probably paying between $1,000 to $1,500 a month in what's called managed services fees. Now, case management application, let's just average that out at $69 a user. On premise, of course, you don't have that. Private cloud, you don't have that. 15 times 69 is 1,035, okay? Now we're going to look at storage. Storage on premise and in the cloud is already included, so it's not applicable. And what you'll find with a web app, they'll say they can store your documents. Well, trust me, there's a reason why they all integrate with NetDocs, OneDrive, Dropbox, Box, and so on. So oftentimes you're going to end up getting one of those services. And the good ones on the low end are about $20 a user. So again, we're not trying to bloat these numbers. Let's just go with the low end one. $20 times 15 is $300 a month. Now we go over to, sometimes this includes accounting, sometimes it doesn't. On average, in a law firm, if you're a 15-user law firm, not everybody's an accountant, so you might have 3 or 4 people. So at about $35 a user, you might have some kind of accounting system for anywhere between $100 to $150 a month. Now with Office 365, which is Word, Excel, Outlook, PowerPoint, OneNote, along with hosted Exchange email, typically together, these are about $15 per user per month. Most private cloud vendors will include that fee in with their service. On premise, you'll see a lot of that still, and in web apps, you'll see a lot of that. So here's your actual monthlies. On premise, you're at $1,600 a month, and a private cloud, you're at $2,000 a month, and with a web app, you're at $2,400 a month. Now we're moving on to the unplanned cost: crashes, viruses, crypto lockers, theft, water damage, fires, natural disasters. Now I tell people when I was a consultant, plan on about $100 per user per year. So 15 users is $1,500 a year. You might not have any issues year 1, you might not have any issues year 2, maybe even year 3 or 4, but eventually something's going to happen that goes bump in the night. So over a 3-year period, plan on a $4,500 fee. Private cloud and web apps, you have very limited liability, so you're not going to have to worry there. All right, annual maintenance plan. So web apps are monthly, no annual maintenance plan, right? Here's what everyone looks at paying. When you own Tabs, you're paying about maybe $100 a user a year. So it's fair to say you're paying about $1,500, maybe give or take, depending on what modules you have and whatnot, or what version of Tabs you're on. So 1,500 times 3, this is a 3-year analysis, remember, $4,500 here. Web apps, no financial hit at all there, right? All right, savings on computers. On premise, you're not going to save anything. Why? Because everything's installed on the local computers. Now, when you're looking at a private cloud, the weight of the applications is all riding on the cloud vendor. So you're going to be able to get away with virtually dummy terminals. So every new computer you buy when you're on a private cloud, you save on average $1,000 per computer. So you have to calculate that as a savings facet. 15 computers times 1,000, $15,000. Well, web apps is half that. And the reason is because even if the applications are in the cloud, you still have Office and Adobe and things installed locally that are linking to it. Whereas in a private cloud format, you can get away with having nothing installed locally and literally have them be dummy terminals. So there's still some savings here, just not as much. What does that bring us to? Here's your grand total. On-premise over 3 years is $78,000. Private cloud, $69,000. Web apps only, $85,000. And we're not even going to talk about the intangibles. There's a lot of intangibles which I feel are more important than the physical costs themselves, but these are items that I can't take a calculator and give you and quantify that for you mathematically. You're just going to have to look at the mobility, security, reliability, scalability, and so on and so forth. Look at all those things and what is that worth to you? And in private cloud, it's excellent. It's pretty good over here, and there's some problems here on the on-premise side. So what happened? Here's our buddy who was saving so much money, and that's what it looks like after the fact. So don't be fooled. Know the math, calculate out your expenses, because what may seem cheap could actually be very deceiving and cost you more. And then on top of that, you lose those robust features. So real quick for review, application features and functionality is not worth trading away for a different cloud concept. Tabs3 and Practice Master can be hosted in the cloud and accomplish your fundamental cloud goals. Understand all of your cloud goals and implement them in an organized manner. And don't use your gut feeling to figure out the financial case. We'll be happy to help you personalize one if you need some help with that calculator. All right, some further reading materials, uptimelegal.com/library. I'd encourage you to download 25 things to ask your legal private cloud provider. We do have a web app versus private cloud cost comparison chart. We also have a on-premise versus private cloud. And only in this webinar are we giving out the one that does the comparison of all three. So that one is not public. You can only get that here on this webinar. Further reading, again, is at our library. If you have questions, feel free to email me at aaron.etrim@uptimelegal.com. If you don't want to type in my whole long last name, it also works at aaron@uptimelegal.com. Last poll, this is not a right or wrong. Would you like us to reach out to you after the webinar to talk about your cloud goals? So we'll let that run for just a couple seconds here. Go ahead, Anthony.
All right, our final poll of the day is now live. I'm going to leave it up for just a bit.
After this, we're going to jump into some Q&A. So I'm sure that we've been gathering up a few questions, and then we're running short on time here. This is supposed to be an hour. We have about 6 minutes left. So anything that I don't get to, I promise that we will get to your questions and answer them via email format.
All right, so throughout this afternoon, we have gotten some pretty good questions from the attendees here. Aaron, the first one is about security. How do law firms deal with security risks of putting their data on the cloud?
So try to keep this short. Security is two facets. One's physical, right? So some people are thinking of their server in their office versus your server at a professionally hosted data center. Now, if you've ever seen one of these data centers that are SOC compliant, SSA, E16, and so on, if you've ever been in one, you'd need to get James Bond in there to steal the data out, right? So there's no contest there. I think what people are more worried about is the cyber standpoint. And there's this thinking of my server's in my 4 sheetrock walls, it's safe, it's here with me. When I put it in the cloud, it's exposed, and all the hackers are going to be trying to get me, right? So this is where the word cloud, from my standpoint, is a metaphor for the internet. If you can get on yahoo.com right now, you're in the cloud, make no mistake about it. So is your server. That's not the way that hacking happens. Hacking happens in the fashion of people that are probing the internet. They're going over thousands of IP addresses. They're scanning ports. They're looking for vulnerabilities and ways in. When I was an IT consultant, a big part of my job was patching that up, was blocking those subnets and those IP addresses that were threatening and trying to break in, and constantly monitoring for those security risks. So if you think that being on site, that you're not in the cloud, you absolutely are, because you're on the internet, which is the cloud. So the real question becomes, whose security standards are stronger? Yours, your firewall versus the enterprise grade firewalls and enterprise grade antivirus and systems that you have with a professional cloud vendor, and or the monitoring that's being done right now of your server versus what monitoring you would get with a professional cloud services provider. And the short answer is there is no comparison. Any professional cloud service hosting provider takes data security as a top priority. You are far more secure in the cloud than anything that you can emulate on site.
Great. Yeah, very interesting. Know that security is on the mind of everybody. We got another question here about contract terms, it seems. What are the typical contract terms in terms of length should we expect when signing up for this type of service?
It's all over the place, honestly. I've seen everything from month to month to 1 year to sometimes 5 years. I wouldn't recommend signing a long-term contract. I know they'll try to lock you in with, hey, but your price is locked in at this time. I'd go with month to month, especially with law firms because they tend to be so volatile. So I've seen, law firms where they sign up with X people and then half the people go form their own firm and walk out the door, and you need the flexibility to go up and down. Also, we've had a client where one lawyer left to be a judge. He was a managing partner and the whole firm just disseminated. If they were on a contract, that could be a problem. You want to be in a month to month, you want that freedom, and typically you can get your cake and eat it too and ask for some sort of term to guarantee your price as well so that you're getting both benefits. But you want your vendor to keep you in because they're doing a good job, not because a contract says you have to be there and do business with them. So I would highly recommend looking for a month to month, but I wouldn't, 12 months isn't horrible either. Just try to stay away from those 36 to 5 year dealies.
Great. And it looks like, we got a couple minutes left. So I think this will be the final question this afternoon. How do you get your data back from a cloud vendor? And are there any costs involved with that?
That's all over the place. Depends on the cloud vendor. So it's probably a question you should ask up front, because I've seen some horror stories. So we've had people move to us and they ask for a quote. Hey, can you put my data on a hard drive and ship it over to Uptime? And I've seen like $10,000 fees. And it's just egregious. It's just punch them in the mouth on the way out the door, right? So first of all, the contract terms should stipulate that you absolutely own the data, but where they can get you is charge you just a crazy fee to get your data back. So you're gonna wanna ask that question and figure that out as to what would that cost and how does that look. And usually it's a generalist that might do this to you. People that are legal industry specific, they care more about their reputation than gouging people. So they're a little bit more ethical in this regard. And also, they care about getting the business back possibly. We've had people leave Uptime because they found what they thought was another cloud service that was exactly like ours. They were like, hey, this one's half price. We're gonna go save all this money. Well, being very kind to people and helping them, if things don't go right, which they don't a lot of times, they'll come back and say, hey, we made a mistake, we want to come back. If you treat them badly on the way out, then you're not going to see that back. Now here at Uptime, I think we charge, don't hold me to this, it's $750 or $850 to get your data on a drive and ship it. And we're really just covering our costs. So we get you an encrypted hard drive. We go to the data center, load it up. We drive to FedEx. We pay for the overnight shipping, which is anywhere from $50 to $100. So we're really just covering the cost of giving you that service. We're not making any money on it. We're just trying not to lose our pants. So you want to make sure that you ask that question. It's a good question, but it's going to vary case by case. So make sure you ask that question of whatever vendor you're considering.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. It looks like we are at the end of the webinar. Thank you, everybody, for joining our webinar this afternoon. As a reminder, there are 2 handouts in the handout section. Please download them. They are very handy. This webinar has been recorded, so if you do have further questions, would like to refer back to it, or you'd like to show it to your colleagues and friends, you can find it on our website tomorrow. Thank you very much, Aaron.
Yes, thank you, Anthony, and thank you everyone for attending.